Welcome to this first video in Lesson 7. In Lesson 7, we're going to be talking all about samples and probability. But before we do that, let's take time to review probability. In this video, I'm going to review probability for populations and samples and talk a little bit about what probability has to do with inferential statistics. So as a review, probability forms a direct link between samples and the population that they come from. So if we know the population parameters, we can determine the probability of a sample. So let's say I know the mean of a population, I can determine the probability of that sample having that mean. If we have sample statistics, we can make decisions about the population. We can talk about the probability of what we're seeing in our sample being true for a population. So probability links samples and populations. And this link is so important for inferential statistics, where we take what we see in a small group and we infer it to the population. So this graphic sort of describes it all. If we have a population, we can talk about the probability of a certain sample coming from that population. And when we have a sample, we can talk about the probability of that sample being part of a larger population. So we use samples to make generalizations. Remember, we take small samples because it's very rarely that we have access to the full population. Maybe it's impossible, maybe it's impractical, but we have to draw samples and then make inferences about the population. But the problem with samples is they only give us limited information. Because we are drawing a smaller subset, we don't have access to the full population. We don't know the whole story of the population. But still, hopefully we're drawing samples that are representative of the population. But if you'll recall from this graphic, even though we try our best, all the samples that we draw are going to be different in some way from the population. We're not going to have an exact replica of the population. So the samples we select are going to be slightly different. Like I said, even when selected from the same population. And that difference between the sample and the population is called sampling error. So it's just something that happens when we draw these small samples, is we're going to have sampling error. And in this lesson, you're going to learn how to calculate sampling error. And that calculation is going to help you to be able to make inferences from the samples we draw to the larger population. So I'll see you at the next video.